Behold, my stuff.
Ooh. This is how you take over book talk. You have a cat and a book and then also a beverage. Okay, got it? Cat, book, beverage. You're all set.
Look at this. Oh, perfect. Oh my God. Isn't it great? Chris! I know, it's my dream. I have goosebumps everywhere.
A little while ago, Ginger's Reading Rex put out a challenge to indie authors to talk unscripted about their story, and I did a post about Aunt Enid, Protector Extraordinaire, the first one in the Aunt Enid Mysteries, and this happened today.
Okay, so for you who don't know about Ginger Book's recommendations, she's got a book challenge, or Ginger's Reading Challenge, for authors to talk unscripted about their books. And I thought I'd talk about Aunt Enid, Protector Extraordinaire, because that's recently been read out on the hashtag human voice only just recently. So I thought, Aunt Enid, so this is Aunt Enid, and I've...
So I just wanted to say thank you, Ginger, for sharing that today. Okay, so for you who don't know about Ginger Book's recommendations, she's got a book challenge, or Ginger's Reading Challenge, for authors to talk unscripted about their books. And I thought I'd talk about Aunt Enid, Protector Extraordinaire, because that's recently been read out on the hashtag human voice only just recently. So I thought, Aunt Enid, so this is Aunt Enid, and I've forgotten to take off the filter for the mirror. It has an older female main character, hidden magic, it's set in Australia. There's a secondary B story with second chance at love. There's a group of older senior sleuths who try to solve a murder. It's basically a murder mystery. I call it an Australian cosy-ish mystery with a twist, because Australian cozies aren't quite as cozy as some of the other cozy mysteries, and it can get a little bit darker, but overall, you know, it has the good wins out vibes. The story starts with 30-ish-year-old Sally, who discovers that her great Aunt Enid has this whole secret world going on, and she discovers that Aunt Enid and her friends are involved in this ongoing conflict, this eternal conflict between the forces of dark and light, and trying to stop the forces of different things coming through from the other worlds to take over our world. And I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything. Oh, trigger warnings. It has garden gnomes that may or may not come to life, and there is a panic attack for those who need trigger warnings. But mostly it's hidden magic set in modern day Adelaide in Australia during one of the hottest summers I've endured here, and just before we had all of our bushfires going on. So there's a sense of that whole menace coming on from the environment as well as from the forces of dark trying to take over our world.
Writers of TikTok, in 13 words or less,
Explain your villain's motivation.
Hungry for power, consume all the worlds, open a portal, consume ours. How many words is that?
in the Fem Audio Takeover, which takes place January 15th.
Lanicia Edmonds Narrator will be doing an excerpt from my book Aunt Enid for the Fem Audio Takeover on the 15th of January in the US and the 16th of January here in Australia. So watch out for that. Thank you, Lanicia.
You shall not defeat me. The hand inched further out of the fissure until the entire forearm rippled in the twilight. Behold, I am darkness, the one thing all life fears. It's the 21st century, yelled Enid. People no longer cower at amateur dramatics. She stepped out from under the veranda and strode into the yard, into the midst of her hidden gnome army. You will not cross into my world. You. The strength of its voice forced Enid back a step. The little human girl, all grown up. The fissure flared. The years have not been kind. Enid's muscles tensed. It remembered her. She had tried so hard to forget. How long has it been? It inched closer. Almost 200 years? There was a scuffle under the veranda, followed by muffled voices and a clicking and ratcheting sounds. The dark chuckled. Tell me, how is your mother? The fire rumbled inside Enid's gut. Each generation had their duty. Her mother had died protecting her as a child. Now it was her turn. She would die protecting Alfred and Agnes if she had to. You will not cross over. She pointed her walking stick at the returned enemy. Who will stop me? It roared. The protector or the human pet? I will stop you, replied Enid. Huh. You and whose army? Enid thrust the end of her walking stick into the ground. The thunderous stomp of hundreds of marching feet reverberated through the ground as the gnomes stood to attention, ready for their orders.
Why all the bees? You may have noticed my crocheted bees. They're on a lot of my posts. And they're in my books. My Aunt Enid Mysteries are cosy mysteries. They're Australian cosy mysteries to be exact, so not only are they set in Australia, but they've got that darker sense of humour that Australian and English cosies tend to have. And, of course, mine have also got a fantasy twist. Because Aunt Enid and her friends, they are protectors, and their job is to protect our world from other world incursions. And the bees? Well, tradition and law says that they can communicate between different worlds. And then there's the telling of the bees, where it's important that you let your bees know about births, marriages, and deaths. And in Aunt Enid, their friend and fellow protector is murdered. And with the bees' help, they realise that the culprit is not from our world. And did you know that the bee is very important for a lot of our food production? And right here in South Australia on Kangaroo Island, we have a colony of Ligurian bees which are isolated, and so it protects them from all the disease stuff that's happening around the world. So bees are very important to us and in my books, which brings us back to why all the bees? Trigger warnings. If you prefer trigger warnings for the books you read, then this post is for you. This month I've been talking about Aunt Enid, Protector Extraordinaire, which is the first book in my Aunt Enid Mysteries. And the most obvious trigger warning is right there on the front cover, which is garden gnomes. There are garden gnomes in Aunt Enid. If you don't like garden gnomes and they scare you, do not read it, because in Aunt Enid they may or may not come to life. Which brings me to the second trigger warning, which is panic attacks. Sally, one of the major characters, has a panic attack based on something she experienced as a child and doesn't really remember, and goes back to garden gnomes. There's also a scene in the cemetery and one where birds bomb dive, so if you don't like that. And the final trigger I wanted to mention today is enclosed spaces. There is a person who ends up being put into a very small enclosed space and things happen, bad things happen, so be warned. That's probably the biggest trigger warnings in the book for people who need them, and for everyone else, just go for it and read Aunt Enid, Protector Extraordinaire.
Lightning crackled. She wanted to run. Her legs refused to cooperate. She tried to scream. Her throat was too dry. She curled her legs up to her chest. There was nothing she could do but try to hide. Shadows flickered around her. She imagined the painted faces rushing at her just as she'd seen hundreds of times before in her nightmares. But this wasn't her imagination. This was real.